religion, family, and technology. Focus on Liberia uncovers and showcases the best of Liberia and shows the world the truth about Liberia. We educate, elevate, and promote all things Liberia. We conduct interviews, panel discussions, debates, and more. Tune in to Focus on Liberia on Facebook and YouTube and be a part of the stories that make up the news.
This is Focus on Liberia, and I am Dennis Jah.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to yet another edition of Tough Talking Thursday on Focus on Liberia. My name is Dennis Jah, and we are broadcasting from Atlanta, Georgia. In tonight's edition of Tough Talking Thursday, we're going to be looking at the job of the President of Liberia. If you hear President of Liberia, the job, what's the job description? Have you thought about that? Or what is the president supposed to do? What are the functions? What are the responsibilities? What are the powers of the President of the Republic of Liberia? If we know that, then we can maybe be able to find who can best serve our country. So it is important. And why is it important that citizens need to know what the president does or what the president is supposed to do? Historically, what has been the power, the role, the responsibility, the functions, and the activities of the president? What the president been up to? We want to discuss that. And with me to do all this, I have FOL Public Policy Analyst, Mrs. Call Family. Call, welcome to Tough Talking Thursday.
Always my pleasure to be here.
Also want to welcome Mr. Thomas B. Kane, also a panelist here on Tough Talking Thursday. Thomas, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Dennis. Great to be here today.
I also want to welcome Dr. Abdullah Dukle. Dr. Duke, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Dennis, and hello, co-panelists, and to the audience.
Thank you. We want to welcome all our viewers from across the globe. Today is the start of Ramadan, and so to all our friends celebrating starting the holy month today, we say happy Ramadan, happy the beginning of Ramadan. And Dr. Duke.
I just broke my fast, if you're asking me.
All right.
I can miss the first day.
Okay, that's good. And Thomas, I'm not going to ask you because you are Thomas, so I don't want to be Thomas.
Asking, say, when the Thomas, the Kane became Thomas, when that happened.
So Thomas is not a Muslim. But it's confusing to a lot of people. Thomas, are you fasting today?
No, not really. I'm a Christian, so from a Muslim background, but then my father was a Christian, and all of us that follow after that were Christians.
So the name Kane is an African name. It's not a religious name though.
Yeah.
Right? Kane
is a Mandingo name.
Yeah, but it's an African name. Right?
Yeah, it's an
is it religious or is it just African? It's not older than Kane? Well, is it from the Quran or is it African?
No, it's African. It's African.
That's what I've always thought, right? So it's that, if his name was Muhammad, he was Christian, it would be different. But Kane, it's like African name.
No, Kane, the last names are all African, but most cases African.
Yeah. So most Kanes are Muslim. I understand.
Happy Ramadan to all our Muslim family members and friends that have started the fast today.
Yeah.
And we wish them all the best over the next 30 days. And we hope that Allah answers all of their prayers.
And two of our colleagues, Mohammed and Adnan, they just broke their fast and they are, they're not able to be here tonight.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah. Oh, okay. We want to welcome our viewers. Please, or if you have not already done so, please share the show with your friend. Tough Talking Thursday. That's the only place where we talk tough, but with a lot of wisdom, logic, and sense. I saw a video and really about the tragic accident in Monrovia, and I couldn't just watch it even for 5 seconds. our hearts go out to the people. It's very, very tragic. And today I tried to drive. I couldn't, as I was driving, just with this little bit of image that I saw, it was very difficult for me. I know all of you, some of you saw it and had the same feeling.
Does anyone know how that video was captured?
No. Maybe it was just happened. People, social media, people get out their cell phone very quickly. But it was horrible.
So I didn't watch the video. Did they capture the accident or the aftermath?
The accident itself.
That's
They
what I
captured
heard.
the accident itself. By the time the truck, lost control and it took speed, somebody just captured that point in time.
I didn't. Somebody sent it to me. I didn't watch it.
Yeah, no, you're better off
I
not
didn't
watching.
watch it either. I didn't watch it either. I don't
Yeah,
know.
I have enough trauma to remember in my life. I don't need to add it up.
No,
But
it's
if anyone perished, may their souls rest in peace.
a lot. I think like 7, and very,
Wow.
in a very horrible way.
I read
Wow.
10.
Oh, okay. And helpless. I mean, if accident takes
Okay,
place,
okay.
people are not there to.
Let's pray for the soul of those who departed.
Amen.
Yes.
And
Thank
our
you.
hearts go out to the family. We hope that everything that is needed for a befitting burial also happens. But very sad indeed. Well, tonight, as I said, our topic is the job of the President of Liberia. We are fortunate to have people here who have followed this very closely from the historic side, the policy side, the diplomatic side, and even practically working with President. But before we begin our topic for tonight, I want us to look at something that is trending. The President of Liberia with some government officials is in the country, the United States, and details surrounding his visit very scanty, and so people are filling in the gaps with what we know in Liberia as ELDC. A lot of rumors surrounding the president. Dr. Dewey, I said, what's your take on this? Has it always been like this? If the president is traveling, who really supposed to tell us the details, or should we not? How much do we have to know and not know?
When the president travels, the press secretary, if he's not there or she's not there, or you have the Minister of Information, somebody has to issue a statement. It's like you do it you wake up, you say, okay, who are you meeting today? Who's coming to see you? You take 1 or 2 pictures. Even if you meet the embassy staff, you make something out of it. Say, okay, the president met with the embassy staff today and discussed blah, blah, blah. And talk to them. Usually that's what we did. I mean, I traveled with, presidents for quite a while, and I was always part of the communication team. And the idea was every time the first thing we did in the morning was a briefing note. And then from that briefing, we sent something to Monrovia. No matter what it is, even when she came here for her dental or something, people talk about it.
Yeah.
So you don't leave the president totally,
You say people talk about it officially or?
Well, officially, yes. Even on vacation, you could say the president is on vacation from so time to this time. And during that time, you mean, okay, nobody's going to bother him or her. So you don't have to issue a communication, But if you say the president is going on a visit to discuss bilateral issues with a different country, you have the obligation to publish every single day a briefing note, at least something to say the president is meeting with so, or this person is coming to see the president, or these are the projects he's discussing or she's discussing. But you have to come up with something. That's the president doesn't have to do it himself. That's why you have a communication team. They have to, sometimes you create an event. Sometimes you create the information. You say, okay, the president is just resting today, but family members are around. Then you send a picture. But you don't, this is not the president's fault. This is the communication team that doesn't know how to work. It doesn't matter what way I came for. He came on an official thing, supposedly. Therefore, the communication team is supposed to have something out every single day. Otherwise, somebody could say, yeah, he's in jail. Yeah.
But Dr. Drew, if it is a high level security meeting, classified, right? I mean, what can the press people in his office or his press secretary say about that? How do you present that without letting classified information out as to who the president is
You know,
meeting or what he's doing?
I think we take, it's good that we are talking about the president's job.
Yeah.
The president does not fly to go into different countries to go meet head of institutions. You're invited by a president to meet with you. This whole thing is like, some thing going on. We don't stand it, but definitely it's not. CIA does not invite the president. The FBI does not invite the president. If CIA is behind you, you have trouble. If they're talking to you, you have trouble. If they want to sign anything, they'll do in Monrovia, not here. Especially, they will not bring the president to do this. But maybe, okay, I have my own theory. Mr. Weah has a delegation with his Minister of Finance, Minister of Foreign Affairs, Minister of Justice. These are all people who are supposed to sign high-level contracts. Is the president coming to sign new contract with lobbyists in DC? Or is he going to Dubai to sign new contract, whatever it is? So all these three people are, signatory to every major contract the government enters. So maybe he's doing that. It's election year. The lobbyists here haven't done much, so therefore he's creating a new path for himself. So, but that doesn't need to be secret. You could say the president met with, policy advisors from the U.S. Congress or whatever it is. But there's no secret between president and the country. You don't have a life. You don't have a life of your own.
Exactly.
You're traveling with 5 ministers. You're not like, oh yeah, today I'm not president. No, you don't have a choice. You sign a contract to be fully on Liberia case 24 hours a day. So you can't change that in the mid-course.
Thomas, what's going on here? A lot of rumors out. I saw something that looked like a newspaper report, but at the end you could see some propaganda in there, and a lot of rumors out there as to what the president is up to. What are you hearing, and what do you make of it?
Well, Dennis, so I had gone to the Executive Mansion website and look at the release that came out. I think there are 5 paragraphs. The first one says that the president has departed Liberia for international engagements in the US and the UAE. The second one says the route through which he left, but that obviously will have to be the RRA, because that's the only international airport we have. And the rest is about his team and the person who's going to be in charge. So I don't know what is the nature of this trip, that information is that scanty. So I could only fall back to the question you were asking, whether this is related to security, whether there was some kind of agreement that the president was not going to provide a lot of information on what he's coming to do in the US. So, I mean, we can all have theories about what exactly is taking place. I see Front Page Africa has been trying over the past 2 days to be able to provide information on it, but every information is saying based on our source, based on our investigation. So it's not really clear what it is. And in terms of the public concern about the trip, I mean, if you go on social media, you see everyone asking questions. And there's something in the age of social media when you get people used to, every time there is a change, then there's a suspicion. Because every time the president has traveled, a lot of the communication back home has been pictures. So you don't see these press releases coming out to say, this is what the president has done today. This is the discussion he has had. This is the outcome of the discussion. What the public has mostly been fed with is the issue of pictures. So it's either a selfie or it's either a picture with some president that they met with, or a handshake with someone else. And in the case of this trip, not a lot of these pictures are coming out. I think the ones that have come out has been leaving the airport and other ones that are selectively being done. So I think there's a lot of concern about what is actually happening in this issue of the CIA I would think that if it is anything to do with the CIA, as a citizen, I wouldn't expect a lot because I do know that these are agencies that do a lot of classified work. So I don't expect to really see a lot of pictures. I don't expect to see a lot until the government feels that it has a responsibility to the citizens and the country to be able to share with us what is really happening.
Yeah. Sometimes, the rumors, people have their own thought. Everything is politicized. Are we making a big deal of nothing here, or the concerns are legitimate?
I mean, the concerns are clearly legitimate. This is a public office. Both his official and unofficial travel is the bill for that is footed by taxpayers. So he's not traveling with his own resources, cannot actually travel with his own resources while he's president. Everything is paid for, the entire entourage, the expense of all of his security and whoever else he brings along, the per diem, that daily cost of their hotel, their food, everything is paid for by this very poor country. This country where we don't even have first responders to, accidents, and we don't have basic materials in classrooms for children. So besides the fact that he's the president and his whereabouts are public, should always be public information. That's what he signed up for, as Dr. Douglas said. Also, the public is, because of the public's footing the bill, and that historically, when presidents travel, their itinerary is public, their goals and plans are public. And in fact, before they travel, the legislature is made aware with a very detailed list of the things that the president is going to do, and therefore the public as well. These things are always, you can go back to the Liberia Herald in the late 1800s, and anytime it was, a president was traveling, President Russell, President Benson, going back to President Roberts, his itinerary was published. He's getting on a ship. He's going to be in the United States. He's going to Barbados. All of that is always published. So this is not something new. What is new is the behavior and the conduct of President Weah and his administration, his team of managers that he has around him. They don't provide any kind of explanation. They have breached all protocol that we've been familiarized with over the years, and they don't seem to understand their responsibility to the country. That this is a public office, and public offices need to be, the information coming out of public offices need to be public. I don't buy the idea that if there's a high security meeting that we should know about it. That's ridiculous. Of course we should know about it. Should we know every detail? We don't need to know the details, but people are speculating because there's a vacuum and they left room for people to do so. And it might have been deliberate, right? They might want people to gossip. I mean, I've read somewhere in some chat room today, somebody was trying to say, oh, the CIA summons Weah. The CIA cannot summon the president of a foreign country to do anything. That's not true. I mean, I know that didn't happen. Is he here to meet with the CIA to get information? Yeah, maybe he said, hey, I want to see what you guys have on, whatever information you collected on this. I'm going to be in America. Can I stop by? You all brief me on what you have on my country. They might agree to it. I don't know. But the fact that we have to speculate is the problem. That's the problem.
Dr. Luke, before you come in, you threw out last week, we were talking about the ambassador statements, right? And following that, the president is here. So people are trying to connect the dots, and there's a lot of confusion. How do you think this can be clarified? Is it after the meeting, when after the visit, when they come out to tell us? Is it going to solve any problem, or what do we need to actually believe? Oh, okay, now we know what was going on.
Dennis, I would say first, the president does not attend high-level security meetings. He gets briefings. President don't go to sit with technical people, CIA and this, and this is what we're going to do, what we're going to do. No, it doesn't happen, never. We have this imagination, oh, the CIA called him, invite him to talk about high levels. No, those things don't happen. That's like fairy tale novel. Presidents are not invited by the CIA, no. The man was in Monrovia in January. He visited Doe, you see? he visited Mr. Weah. He invited Weah to come see him. Weah said, "Oh, I've been in Washington. I'll come and see you." So he called. He said, "Oh, I'm passing through Washington next week. So okay, come see me. We'll give you a tour." He goes to the CIA. He has a tour, but his real trip is in Dubai. He's just here on vacation, passing through. There's nothing that the CIA will sit with Weah to bring him from Liberia to discuss here. No, unless we don't know government. America has now fallen over his head. That the CIA director would say, "Bring me Mr. Weah, we have questions for him." No, come on, let's guys. US is a serious country.
What's about people with him, like finance minister? People are saying this minister, that minister, is that possible, but not the president?
No. But as I said, those ministers are here for a deal. They're going to, these are signatories to the government papers. The finance minister, the justice minister, and who else? They sign everything. And the foreign minister, they sign every contract, major contract the government enters to. So they could be here to sign a contract with a lobbyist, or they could be going to Dubai to sign a contract with some investors, whatever it is. But these are people who sign government documents. The president never signed government documents.
Exactly.
President does not, people think the president doesn't do these things. They are technicians. That's why when you have two ministers will sign a document and the two presidents will stand behind them, because the president don't sign. That's a protocol. You don't change the world because your name is George Weah. The man went to Monrovia. He said, "George said, I will come and see you." He said, "Yeah, please, when you're in Washington, stop by. We'll give you the tour of the CIA. So he's in town. He got nothing to do here except meet with the lobbyists and then go to Dubai and do his thing. So let's stop worrying about the man. Really serious. I mean, he was gone for 49 days. Liberia is still the same. So he's going to be here for 3 days and go to Dubai. So what? Don't hurt yourself, man.
Call the other way to look at it. There are people who really say, "Oh, the president doesn't know what he's doing," so they might be kind of fooling him here and there. That's the perception with other people that he may not be aware of all these protocols, so it's possible that people call him to ask him questions. In fact, some people are taking it a step further and saying all kinds of weird stuff.
I mean, Dennis, I don't even know how to respond to that. I mean, whether Weah knows what he's doing or not, the CIA knows what they're doing, the US government knows what they're doing. Whether we respect ourselves or not, we're a sovereign country. And nobody is going to call or summon the president of a foreign sovereign state to come to meet with their security apparatus in the United States. It doesn't happen. So, I mean, I think we're beating a dead horse. There's a whole bunch of noise about nothing. And once again, tax dollars are being wasted on a frivolous, joyride. And they're going to come back, and Liberia is going to be, probably about another $1 million poorer than we were when he left. And there's going to be no fruits or, benefit to this. This is a problem. We have so much work to do on the ground, and it's being neglected. We have things that are, people are opening companies and we don't have the capacity to regulate them. And we're celebrating that. And the government is there celebrating and advertising public, using public resources to advertise private corporations that they don't have the ability to regulate. They're not even saying, this is how we're going to make things safe. And the public is here talking about, another one of the joy rides and the fun adventures of Weah. It just doesn't make any sense. There's nothing significant happening here in the United States. I don't know about in the UAI, but I know if something significant was happening here, we would know about it. Because unlike Liberia, the United States government, when they're having any kind of bilateral relationships with another country, they discuss it, they publish it, it's out there. Nothing's happening, nothing's published, nothing's happening. Yeah. There's not even a mention anywhere that he even touched foot in the soil, because it's not important. I mean, I haven't seen anything published by any reputable U.S. paper. Oh, George Weah was here. Nobody cares.
Exactly.
Thomas, let's conclude on this for the next 1 minute. I spoke to someone who came with the president, one of his in his press team, and he said, "Oh," I said, "What is the trip about?" He said, "It's government to government." And that was no
No government to government.
Nothing. It means it's not government to government. We know about it.
Just morale. Just morale.
Exactly.
Thomas,
Exactly.
you think so, Moran?
I mean, government to government, I mean, it's always the case, you know. And the president had used that word before it became a very big issue in Liberia when he said G to G. But it's actually, I mean, in diplomacy and international relations, that's just all. I mean, government is relating with another government. But I think the point we've all raised is this issue of leaving the public in suspense. It's government to government, but to do what? Government to government to discuss what? Government to government to sign which agreement, you know? And I mean, if you bring all of these, the Minister of Commerce is there, the Minister of Finance is there, there must be a reason why they are on that trip. If it is only the president coming for vacation, then the question is, why are all these people coming? Are they also coming on vacation? So I think there should be a reason why the entire delegation, the entire team is here. And it goes back to the point we've made that when you leave the public in suspense, and it's really happening at a time when I mean, Liberia is preparing to go to elections. You have this issue of the election commission saying they don't have money. Should the Minister of Finance be back there to see that they have the resources that they need? It's not even clear to me whether the national budget has been approved by the president. I think the both houses pass it because they must be on break now. Is it approved or not? So there are a lot of things that are concerning back home. If that high power delegation is coming here, and I mean, if somebody says it's government to government, then the public is always interested in knowing exactly what is the discussion. And again, this is our bilateral partner. So every time Liberia is having an engagement with the US, there's this increased interest in really trying to understand what is going on. But what I do think is that regardless of what it is, we get to know. It will be a matter of days. It will get out and we'll get to understand what the mission was.
I mean, yeah.
Can you say sorry, go ahead.
All right. Thank you. Complete your thought. We're moving on.
No, I thought Ko was talking. I'll stop.
No, go ahead. I was just going to say something not very nice, but it's okay. I decided not to.
Yeah, I'll say something nice. He took people to the World Cup. What was that?
Exactly.
What do you want to know? He said, why all these people here? They went to the World Cup with him. They were in and out of, Qatar, like, you're going to Wadasa every day.
I don't know. Yeah, it's
they're here. They went to the World Cup. He was there for 49 days. Everybody went in and out.
Thank you.
Nothing came out of it.
But like I said initially, the confusion is at the World Cup, they took a lot of pictures. We saw them with tickets and everything. But the question is, why are they not taking the pictures?
How will you take pictures if you're doing nothing?
Well, let me ask you a question. Did Sekou go with them? Sekou had a picture, man. It's Ramadan, right? So they all leave Sekou. Sekou get the picture, man, right now. He's on different things.
I saw a post on Facebook. It said, Kalasco, what happened? But ladies and gentlemen, our topic for today, what we want to discuss today, that was just our icebreaker here, is what is the job of the president of Liberia? I don't know how many people thinking about that. A lot of time people running for president and say, I will do this when I get there. I have the country I had, or the international community knows me, or I know how to make a business, or I'm wise. Or what really is the job of the president? What is the president supposed to be doing? What does a president do? What is the job description? I get it. The Constitution talks about the powers and all that and stuff like that. What really does the president of Liberia do? Dr. Duke, you work with two. But let's start, on a broader scope, constitutionally and everything else. What are the functions of the president? What are the powers and the responsibility of the president of Liberia, Dr. Duke?
I think the one responsibility of the president is to provide leadership to the government. So he's the head of the executive, and he appoints people who are supposed to carry out the day-to-day running of the government, and that's what she or he does, and that's the job. And you provide leadership, and by doing that, you could go from paying attention to schools, to providing long-term vision to the nation and say, this is what we are aspiring to. So you can, change people's mind daily, not just build houses or roads or just open businesses, but really open the people's mind to something different. I see a president, they will say a good leader do good things for his people or her people. A great leader make people do great things for themselves. So that, is aspirational. But you could have a manager president. So I don't really know, beside leader, I don't think providing leadership and vision, I don't see anything else that you could do. And also, being committed to those things. Because you can also have a vision and not be committed to the vision yourself. So people will say, okay, we're not going to do what you say, we're going to do as you do. So if you're promoting equity, integrity, and then you're stealing money, people say, oh, okay, yes, we know. We do like you. We'll talk about it in the papers, in the newspapers, on the air, and we still like you. So that's my short definition.
Mr. Connor, if you were reading the job description of the president, what would it look like?
I think so. Everything we do in our country, the foundation of it, I think you mentioned, is the Constitution. I think to me, anyone who wants to become president for Liberia, or for that matter for any country, you should take the Constitution and read it and see what are the powers that the Constitution gives you. And really think to yourself, how are you going to utilize those powers to be able to achieve your vision and goal for the country, like Doc said? I think anybody who wants to be president should first have your own philosophy about life, your own ideology about how you will promote the country from where it is to be able to move forward. Because there is this thought that every next generation is better than the previous one. And the next generation doesn't get better until there's preparation today for them to be better off. And so when you are the president, you have to think not only for the people today, but even the children that are yet to be born. So to me, the whole description of the roles and responsibility of the president comes from the Constitution. What are the powers that you have in the Constitution? Doug already mentioned the issue of being the head of the executive branch of government. But again, when you read Article 50, it says the president is the head of the executive branch, is also head of government, is commander-in-chief of the army. So it means when you combine the three branches of government, overall the president sits at the top. So that is where I agree with Doug, that it's all about leadership. And when you sit at the top, you should be looking more ahead so that you can pull the others to be able to follow you. So the Constitution provides all of those powers. The Constitution provides the roles and responsibilities of the president. But to me, it has to be someone who's really grounded, not only administratively, but technically, because you have all of these sophisticated technicians working under you. If you don't have a sense of direction, they will pull you in all directions. You can have all of the advisors, but if you don't have that ability to say, this is not the direction I want to follow, then you wouldn't be a very good president. So to me, the foundation is the Constitution. That's where your powers are. That's where your responsibilities come from. And once you understand it and you have a genuine commitment, like has been said, to really be able to move a country forward or to move Liberia forward, then you can fit into that role as a president. But if you don't have leadership traits, you don't have leadership abilities, you don't have technical abilities, then it becomes difficult for you to fit into what the Constitution requires of you to do as a president.
Thank you. Carl, I'm in Bannersville, and somebody asked me, what does the president of Liberia do, or what does the president supposed to do? That job, that function, what will you say?
I mean, we're just repeating what everyone else said, right? The president is the chief executive. Since the 1847 Constitution, in Article 1, the executive power is described as the supreme executive power shall be vested in the president. Supreme executive power. The president has no boss outside of the Republic of Liberia. The president has no boss outside of the Republic of Liberia. So the president is answerable to the people and the people alone. The president is only answerable to the Liberians. The president is not answerable to any foreign power. The president is not answerable to Joe Biden. He's not even answerable to the United Nations. The president is answerable to Liberian people, and that is all. This is the essence of the Constitution. It does not provide, it is the supreme law of our country. It does not provide, he is not answerable to anyone other than the legislature, the Supreme Court, and of course, above all, the Constitution, the laws of the country. It is the Constitution, as Thomas Connor rightfully said, that provides the terms of reference for all three branches of government, including the president, the vice president, the legislature. What their duties and responsibilities are clearly laid out. They have been clearly laid out since the year 1847. There is no ambiguity. There is no room for the kind of gross misconduct and violation that has been going on unchecked under this administration. So if anyone in Gardnersville was to ask me, what is the role and responsibility of the president, I would say their responsibility is to serve you. Their first and foremost responsibility is to serve the people of the country, to provide them with safety. This is why they command the military. What people forget is that in Africa, not just Liberia, but in Africa in general, the militaries are not really there to protect the citizens of the country. They're there to protect the assets of the imperialists against the citizens. How many times have you seen African militaries protect their citizens against some foreign invader? How many times does that really, really happen? For the most part, the military is there on standby to be deployed against the citizens. This is wrong. This is unconstitutional. So commanding the military itself is answerable to the Constitution. There's no country outside of the laws of the Constitution. It's the Constitution that creates the state. It's the Constitution that gives us the right to be citizens. It's the Constitution that gives the president the right to do the things that he does, to administer laws passed by the legislature. So we have to remember this. I hear a lot of Liberian people, very intelligent people, constantly saying the same things. Oh, we are with C. They're not called we are. Who is they? Who is they? George Weah can get up right now and say, America, we want nothing else, so y'all go away. Then nothing will come out of it. He is the president. This is a sovereign country. No one can summon him. And so that's what I want our people to really start to understand, is that this executive power is not something to be played with. It is also not an absolute power. He cannot travel without informing the legislature. He can be impeached by the legislature. So this presidential power is not absolute. He's not the boss of the Supreme Court. He's not the boss of the legislature either. He's only in charge of the executive, which is the operational branch of government. That needs to be very clear, because sometimes people think that he gets to tell the lawmakers and instruct them what to do. No, he does not.
So, Carl, how do you explain this? The first in the Constitution, Article 50. By the way, if you look at Article 50 to 62, you all talk about the president, the vice president. So Article 50 says, the executive power of the republic shall be vested in the president, who shall be head of state, head of government, and commander-in-chief of the armed forces.
Right.
What does that mean when you say you are the head of the government? You are the executive power is vested in you, and you are the head or the commander-in-chief. It sounds absolute to me.
So you have to read the Constitution contextually. And as one article relates to another. You can't just pick out a line and say, this is the end of the Constitution. This is all we're going to roll with, because there's other articles that also talk about checks and balances and how he can be impeached, and also who passes the budget, who's responsible for writing laws, who's responsible for allocating resources. So when you read further, you get to understand that being the head is really being the head of operations. And he is the physical face, the spokesperson for the state. If any one individual needs to stand up and speak of our national policy, the legislature passes laws and rules, it is the president that is going to articulate this to the world. So he is our face internationally and nationally. He is the head in that sense. But we have a government of 3 co-equal branches that are supposed to function as checks and balances. That is the whole message and the purpose of the Constitution. So anyone who just reads half of an article or 1 or 2 lines is not going to understand what it means because the context is not there.
Thank you. Dr. Duke, historically, and how has it been? As the president, the power of the president being the same, the responsibility, or has things changed over time?
Well, you could say people change the responsibility of the president. They took on powers that, that was not ascribed to them by the Constitution. And I think it started with Tubman, this benevolent dictator, if you really think about it. Before him, there was always this transition, this kind of class democracy was accepted. You do your 2 term, you retire, and then they find one person, It was all done in a backroom deals, but Tubman came in and changed the whole process. Not only stay for ever, but he really took the powers into himself, to the point where he will appoint people to the assembly, he will appoint everybody and dismiss people as he wants to. So I think people changed the Constitution. No, they didn't change the Constitution. They changed how the president operates, and that gave birth to what you call imperial presidency. And the Liberian president appoint more people to more positions than anybody else on per capita in the world. I mean, from minister, justices to every position you can imagine in the government, to county level, to city government, the president appoints everybody. So that gave that president so much power and control in a poor country that make him like an emperor. Somebody once said here, every 4 years we elect somebody ordinary and expect that person to be an angel when we give them all the powers in the world. Because once you become president, you grab power, you grab the power. And that's the problem we have. We have imperial presidency for a small country. The powers of the presidents are too big.
Are those powers given to the president by the Constitution, or they just take them?
I think they take them. I mean, we talk every day. We talk about the legislature passing every single thing that we want. Although it's dominated by by the opposition. He was able to kick a sitting justice out of the Supreme Court. Nobody, watch about it. So yeah, he can influence it. Yeah, that there are many ways of coercion. You can coerce people by threatening them. That was Samuel Doe, Charles Taylor, saying this town probably too small for the 2 of us, and then you have to run away. But now we can't do that. So, but he has the envelope. He has this magic touch that seem to make everybody say yes, sir, Mr. President, either they're opposition or not. They say okay. So he had that. He's using that, but it's not his power. He's not supposed to influence the legislature when they have a budget to pass. That's not his job. He's not supposed to be talking to the Supreme Court about how to run the court, how to interpret the laws, how to interpret the Constitution. That's not his job. But the president will do it because that's how our presidency works as an imperial presidency.
Mr. Kane, why is it important, or is it even important for the people, especially those that are voting, to know the powers, the function, the role, responsibilities of the president, or it doesn't matter because the president is going to take power anyway?
So I want to go back to Article 1 that Kawu mentioned. If you look at the way the Constitution is laid out in the very first article, it doesn't start with government. It starts with the people. The first sentence is the people. And then after the people, the second sentence is the people can use that power to be able to bring a government on board. And if it doesn't serve their purpose, then they can remove the government. So the whole country is the people, but then there's no way these people can all exercise power. So we have to have this representative form of government. And so the people use the power to bring the government to say you are the one that is responsible for our security. You are the one responsible to make sure we have food to eat. You are the one responsible to make sure we got school for our kids to go to. So that power is transferred. They will transfer it to the president, and the president will now use that power to be able to do appointments in the executive. And then in the legislature, the people also have that power to be able to elect some group of people. In the judiciary, of course, it is the president that appoint them and they go for confirmation. So it is very important for the people to get to know what are the roles and responsibilities of the president. For instance, the Constitution is broad enough, but there are some other laws that also have indication of what the power of the president is, drawing from the Constitution. So the Constitution, for instance, provides that we cannot get any money from our treasury, in the sense that those savings that we have either at the central bank or our foreign reserve, we cannot withdraw any money from those treasuries and use them until there's an enactment by the legislature. But it doesn't stop there. There has to be a warrant from the president for that money to be utilized. So everything that the government does, it has to be at the approval of the president. And the president delegates that responsibility to the Minister of Finance. And even that delegation is at the will and pleasure of the president to say, these are the responsibilities I'm going to give to you as a Minister of Finance to manage the finances of the president, of the country. So this is why when you look at the Public Financial Management Law of Liberia, for instance, that was passed in 2009, Chapter 5 states that the overall responsibility for managing the national budget on the policy side is the responsibility of the president. So whatever the Minister of Finance is doing is responsibility that has been delegated. So the Liberian citizens need to know that the role of the president is not just to sit when the budget passes, it goes to him for signature. He has to provide a policy direction to the Minister of Finance as to how the budget should be crafted, where resources need to go. So all these cries, we can be crying, oh, this person's budget went up, education did not get enough money. Everything is to the consent and approval of the president. So I think as citizens of the country, we all need to read the Constitution from the first sentence to the last to get to know what is the responsibility of all of these people. What is the responsibility of the president? What is the responsibility of the legislature? What is the responsibility of the executive? So when that equal power that they need, that check and balance is not there, we know exactly who to hold responsible. Because in some instances, certain thing happens and we see the three branches of government playing the public and saying, it is not my responsibility, it is this person's responsibility. Say, for instance, the issue of the War and Economic Crimes Code. The president said, I wrote the legislature, I asked for advice, they've not advised. So there's always this issue of who is responsible. But as citizens, when we know exactly what are the roles and responsibilities of each of these branches of government and who is actually at the head, the executive is the president. You go to the legislature, they have two houses. The lower is the speaker, the upper is the Senate pro tem, and in the judiciary is the Chief Justice. There will always have to be somebody who will take the responsibility to manage those who are under them. And I think it's good for the Liberians to understand what are the roles and responsibilities of all of these stakeholders and leaders so that we can be able to hold them accountable.
Thank you. Carl, how well do you think the citizens understand these roles and responsibility of starting with the president and the way we voted in Liberia over the past 20 years? Has that knowledge reflected in the way we vote or lack of knowledge?
I mean, I don't think the elected officials understand the roles and responsibilities before you can say the citizens. I mean, I guess they're also citizens who ran for office. So their lack of understanding the roles and responsibilities is indicative of the population that elected them. So you have people in the in the legislative branch, usurping the functions of the executive branch. You've got the executive branch usurping the function of the legislative branch. Then you've got the the oversight that's supposed to, they have all these committees with the names, right? We're the Senate Oversight Committee for this, and we're the Oversight Committee for that, and they don't oversee anything. They don't do anything. So there's a horrible accident, and there's a Senate and a House Committee on Transportation. What are they doing? What are they doing to pass and enforce laws? Nothing. They're doing nothing. They sit and wait for instruction from the president. They're not serving their constituents. They're not looking at how they can advance the cause of their constituents, of bettering their lives through doing what the Constitution instructs them to do. They are passing extra constitutional budgets, allocating funds and resources to themselves so they can basically do what the executive branch of government is supposed to be doing. And all of them accepted the money. And Liberian people, the citizens, also have a responsibility, a constitutional responsibility, right? So as a citizen, you are also responsible to elect people for the benefit of yourself, your community, and the entire country. As a citizen, you have the responsibility when your lawmakers are not doing the right thing to hold them to book. You have the responsibility to walk to them and say, you're not doing the right thing. We demand this. And if you don't do what we need you to do, we are going to write a petition to remove you. You can do that. And if that doesn't work, don't elect the person next time. But before you can do this, as a citizen, your number one responsibility is to the Constitution. Study it, learn it, know what it means, know what your power is. You cannot be a good citizen if you don't know your terms of reference as a citizen. So I always like to say this, it falls back on the everyday people. Liberian citizens need to take responsibility for their country. Liberian citizens need to take their country to the place they want it to go. The country will never advance beyond the demand of the citizens. Power concedes nothing without demand, as they say. So the country will never be better than what the citizens demand it to be. First thing is civic education. When you start seeing Liberia fall apart is when civic education fails, when the people even teaching civics don't understand anything about the country or the Constitution. They can't teach it to children. Now these children are voting. They understand absolutely nothing. We can't keep blaming stuff on the war. Nobody's shooting us anymore. We're citizens who spend hours on Facebook. You have the resources to download the Constitution. If you can download a video of Nigerian people eating fufu, you can download your Constitution. If you have enough data to watch TikTok on your phone, you have enough data to study your responsibility as a citizen. So let's not even start talking about what Color Green them doing in the House or what Boto Kana them doing in the Senate. Let's first talk about what are you, citizens, Thomas Kana, Carl Fambula, Dennis Jha, what are y'all doing as citizens? What is your responsibility to the state? You begin there, do your job, and then you start to demand to those that you've sent in office. And once you study the Constitution, understand the role and responsibility of a citizen, you might not elect the kind of people you elect. You might start to choose the best people among you to represent the terms of reference as laid out by the Constitution. This is how the problem gets solved. You have to start with yourself. The most powerful people in Liberia are Liberian people. The most powerful tool that Liberians have is democracy and the Constitution. But you cannot use a weapon that you don't know how to use, that you haven't studied. The Constitution is your power.
Thank you, Dr. Du. Based on what Carl said, let's look at this whole chicken or the egg quandary, right? Because presidents or leaders, they don't want the people to know, right? So which one comes first, the people knowing or the leaders being responsible to teach the people? So it's like, okay, if you don't know what I'm supposed to do, it benefits me because I stay in power. You know, I can be a lawmaker and I promise to build a bridge, right? So which one comes first, and where you think are we when it comes to citizens knowing the roles and responsibility of their elected officials and acting upon those that knowledge to vote them in or out of power?
First, I think you have to look at the history of the modern nation state of Liberia. You know, this is not something that where people from the villages and the towns got together and say, well, you know what, we're going to get together and then create a new nation and call it Liberia. This was something that was created. You know, the first president was first an agent of the American Colonization Society. From that, he became governor. From that, they made him president. And they created a presidency to suit him, meaning he was there to take care of a small class of people who had to learn to govern people they don't know and people who were not part of that state. And we run like that for 100 some years. So people who created that state made it for themselves. It was just made for that group of people with small integration time to time. There were integrations, but the state was made for a class of people. And then 1980 happened. All of a sudden, people who were outside of the ring became the ringmasters. And from 1980 to now, we never had that moment to sit down to really rationalize politics, to rationalize what is the Liberian state, what do Liberians know about this being state person, what is our teaching. So I think those are the questions we have to ask. How do we go from that? You know, how do we take it from 1980 up and say, okay, this is where we were when that government was working. Everybody thought that was normal time. Tabata was president, idea was coming in, people were discussing ideas, nobody was going to jail except few, and then they released you. But then we never had a chance to sit down and say, okay, from Samuel Doe had no experience of statehood, statesmanship, none, zero. All his colleagues, the same thing. The few people who tried to work with them, the so-called progressives, they were out after 2 years because the Americans took over the Doe government, and we never had that chance to sit. I think Dr. Don talks about that a lot, you know, to sit down and say, how do we transform our nation from what it was to where it is going to be? And to do that, you have to have a plan. You can't just teach kids what you don't have. You have to have a plan and teach kids that plan and then go. I think you need a teacher first. So you need a teacher, you need a lesson plan, you need a project, you need a vision for the country. But I don't think Liberia has ever had that. Since the so-called majority took power in 1980, we never had that chance, that say, few years of tranquility where we can really sit and discuss issues and put a roadmap ahead and say, okay, this is where the country is going, and make that into a national dialogue.
Thank you. Thomas, if you want to add, I will go to the...
So I think I agree with that. This country is a product of history. And this is why, for me, I normally don't get annoyed with the Liberian citizens. They are victims of situations that they've gone through. So there is one thing fundamental in this country, for instance. Before the US got her independence, you have power at the state level. And when they were gaining independence, the states defined what the national government was going to be, and they gave the powers to the national government. So the federal government is a product of the states. They created it. But unfortunately, that did not happen in Liberia. At the point of independence, you had these people who were in Basso, the others in Sino, Monserrato, and I think later Grand Cape Bank County was added. They were the ones that just came together and declared independence. And you also don't blame them a lot, because at that point in time, there was no integration. They were fighting wars with everyone. So power needed to be concentrated to make sure that they protected themselves and all of that. So the states have no real authority. So now you have Lofa, you have Bong, you have all of these counties. But what is the authority and power that they have? They don't have any power. All the power was concentrated in Monrovia. So it goes unchecked. So this is why you have a constitution written this way that gives all of the power to one person. Even with the recent reforms that have been taking place with decentralization, for instance, every time you came to, like, even the superintendents are appointed by the president. And there's no way you can do genuine decentralization until you have elected local governments that have the powers to be able to raise their own revenue and exercise power over their own budget. But the fear was, who was going to say to the president, we are going to amend a portion of the constitution to remove the power from you, not to appoint superintendents. Nobody wants to go around it. And to me, after having gone for over 175 years, I think the discussion we should be having now is, does the Constitution, and this is something that a lot of other people have said, does the Constitution that we have now serve our purpose? If it doesn't serve our purpose, then let's have a new Constitution, like other countries like Kenya did in 2008 or 2010. They wrote a very new Constitution and put in a lot of other opportunities through which the citizens could have the power to be able to exercise their agency. For instance, on the development of our national budget, it is developed by national agencies in Monrovia, just from Broad Street to Rail Line, right? The citizens have no voice in the development of the national budget. The last study that was done by the International Budget Partnership, citizen participation is 6%. Around 2017, it was 21%. It reduced back to 6%. So it's essentially the Minister of Finance develops the budget circular, send it to Minister of Health and every ministry and say, tell us how much you want to spend next year, without talking to any of the citizens. They just send their budget estimate at 5%, and they develop the national budget, 500 million, 600 million, and they use that. And the point is that we are not really operating as the way democracies do operate. So the executive has their lapses, like what we were saying. So because the executive has all of the money and they don't deliver services to the citizens at the community level, the lawmakers are the ones that come and do all these projects. Why should the lawmaker be building bridges?
Oh my
A
God.
lot of things. So it's like we're not really following the way a government needs to function, and we have a lot of problems. And just to conclude on the issue of civics, how can a country that needs to educate her citizens, we remove civics from our curriculum? We stopped teaching civics for a couple of years. Now donor partners are working with the government of Liberia to reintroduce civics. So how are your citizens going to know their roles and responsibilities and the functions of a government if you can't even teach them? Everyone is left to fend for themselves. So it's a very big problem.
Thank you. Cole, I see you shaking your head.
I respectfully disagree with my colleagues on so many points. The very first thing is our understanding of Liberian history is not the same, and also our understanding of American history is really not the same. I mean, when America became a federal government, America started out with 13 states. There were about, I think, 20 or 22 states, something like that, when America galvanized. And America is great because of centralization, not because of decentralization. I mean, I'm a public policy professional. America became great because of its diversity. It had to centralize so that it could nationalize, so that people could know that they were citizens. And it has always been in the United States, just to piggyback on that analogy, it has always been African people in the United States that have pushed the envelope for human rights and democracy. And those have been the people who have been most disenfranchised and most abused. So the argument that because Liberian citizens, especially those of us in the Northern Territory that was lastly incorporated into the country, because we were incorporated in 1964, therefore we're somehow absolved of civic responsibility. I think that's an outrage. And I also respectfully disagree about the idea that we are not decentralized and power isn't decentralized and citizens don't have any power. We have a representative democracy. The problem is not the structure of the government, it's rampant ignorance and dysfunction is the problem. Because everyone in the country, we have a direct democracy. You cannot get more decentralized than that. Every community elects someone to go and fight for them and advocate for them and represent their interests. So what you have is, it doesn't matter if they sit on Mars. It's who sent them to go sit at the table. The table doesn't have to be in Voinjama. If the people of Voinjama say, Thomas, I want you to go, this is what we need. We're sending you there to go represent our interests, and Thomas gets to Monrovia. Thomas leaves Voinjama and goes to sit down in Monrovia and cuts cake and forgets about his people. And when people come, they be dancing for him. That doesn't mean we don't have decentralized power. It means where the people themselves, the citizens, are not aware of their power. That's what that means. And they're sending someone who's gonna go and do nothing. So even if you decentralize that dysfunction, it's not going to change anything. because the people still don't know any better. So it all begins with educating the citizens about what their responsibilities are to themselves and their fellow citizens. Decentralizing resources, absolutely. When we are from a country like Liberia, we start talking about decentralizing power. We start getting into this whole thing where people are going to start dividing themselves on clans and tribes. We'll end up with 100 counties in Liberia when we finish with this thing. Liberia is less than 6 million human beings. We don't need to do anything but educate ourselves and nationalize ourselves and make everybody understand that they are equally Liberian by sharing resources and sharing access to information. Once that's done, I trust that the people will make better decisions about who's going to represent them. But you can't have a direct democracy and say power isn't decentralized. You can't have a direct democracy and say, oh, the people don't have a voice. What happens is the people are giving their voice to people who are not respecting them. The people are giving their voice to people who don't know their function when they get to the capital. That's the problem. In fact, they're electing people who only go to the village when it's time for elections. They don't even live there. There's so much wrong and so much dysfunction. We're not even following the Constitution before we say we want to write a new one. Let's first follow it. Do you know that we have disproportionate representation, which is unconstitutional, and nobody has said anything about it? Most of these people that are sitting in the legislature are sitting there against the Constitution. You have, if you're from Monserrato, if you're from Nimba, if you're from any of the populated counties, each human being has less representation in the larger counties than they do in the smaller counties, because somebody thought it was a good idea to give more jobs to people in the smaller counties, violating the Constitution. And we're all sitting down here okay with it. Then we're talking about, oh, the Constitution is the problem. How is the Constitution the problem? When if you live in Boperu, you have more representation and you have more allocated resources to pay your lawmakers than the people who live in Monserrato County. Because it's not land that they represent, it's human beings. It's Liberian citizens they represent. And so because of the way that we think is a problem, the last thing I want to say, I'm going to get on my soapbox, but I really want us to understand this. Whatever our opinions are about how Liberia was established, the people who established the country were very clear about why they established the country. Hillary Teague, Elijah Johnson, Samuel Benedict, these people wrote their vision down. And for generations, Liberia has fought to maintain its sovereignty and to expand its sovereignty against tremendous odds, against sabotage, against some of the longest lasting economic embargoes in world history have been put against this little country, and which ended, the embargo then ended with our economic annexation. So a lot of the things that we see ourselves, the challenges we face, yes, they are there, but greater challenges have been faced and conquered. And we as the citizens who have been privileged to learn have a responsibility to teach, to reach back and teach forward.
Thank you.
Dennis, can I make a quick point?
Yeah, sure.
You know, like I said from the beginning, the history, there were challenges. I mean, the people wrote what their vision was, but even that vision was a vision of a collective vision of everyone.
Yes.
We all know that history, right? So there were challenges. Like I said, this is why I acknowledge that there were challenges. When they came, there were wars between them and those that were there. So Liberia has always been going along that path. I don't agree to say, okay, America has to centralize so that they could remain together. They had a lot of problems among themselves. Some states wanted to break away. Centralization helped to keep them together, but the prosperity of this country is because they provide opportunity at the subnational level for people to be able to utilize their own resources to be able to have a direction for themselves. So I don't agree with that. The other thing I don't agree with is to...
But that's not what I said, though. Just be clear about what I said before you disagree.
Let me just finish. The other point is to downplay the issue of decentralization. So there are theories of decentralization. The first theory is that we gave authority to people at the bottom there and expect that they have the intent and desire to benefit those that they do represent. And over time, we've seen that that is not the case. So even though we have representatives, but it's very clear, are they representing the interests of the people? No, they are not representing the interest of the people in many instances. So what then do? We empower these very people to have a voice on resource utilization, on resource mobilization, so that that can be used as an accountability tool. We are leaving the issue of the president and going into democracy and the way it's supposed to be done. But let's not trust that just because we have representatives, they are going to serve the interests of the people. They don't do it. So this is why decentralization.
The problem is civic education. It's not decentralization. It's not. We already have a direct democracy. They don't have the tools they need to make the correct decisions. We have to correct that first. Putting power in the hands of people who have never seen a constitution before is not the answer. It just is not.
Then we have to educate them.
That's the point. Leave things as they are, educate them, and see how well things will function. Before you start talking about dismantling things, you put in the card. The bottom line is you have a direct democracy that isn't functioning because people are not being given the tools that they need to make decisions.
So should we continue?
You cannot decentralize dysfunction. It is not going to help.
All right.
This is not something that just jump up and.
I think that both of you agree on the decentralization of resources.
Of course, the resources need to be decentralized. Of course.
It doesn't even work.
My decentralization was more about, the reach of the president. Because we're talking about financial function. When you talk about decentralization in that sense, I don't think the president should appoint the superintendent of NIMBA. Or should, the police director from NIMBA should be sent from Monrovia. I think NIMBA should decide who the police director is. They should elect the superintendent. And every town that has, it was a city, etc., should elect their own mayor and the officials. And then, distribution of resources. And then you make decisions at that level. So the farmer knows, oh, the mayor is going to be running the city, the town. He's going to speak up. It's not like
we should do a different show about decentralization. But if you decentralize while people are in this state of ignorance, it won't be good for the country.
We'll have a separate show on decentralization because it's very interesting. But let's
call you right, but I'm right.
Cole is not right.
I am right. I'm very correct.
I'm right.
Let me start with you, Cole. What we say, the president runs the day-to-day function of the government. So let's look at history. That this day-to-day running of the government by the president. Let's start from October to now. How does that look like? How is it different from one president to the other? Because we have the Constitution, we have this, but we also have style, we also have personality. And we also have maybe qualification. So how has it been?
You're asking me to talk about Talbert time when my eyes were not quite open yet.
You read about it.
So Talbert was so experienced. He served as vice president under our first imperial president, which was Tubman. So Talbert was experienced. Talbert was extremely enlightened. He was educated. He understood the world. He understood Liberia in its historical context. He understood the intent of Liberia. He understood that Liberia was a work in progress, just like the United States is a work in progress. Like the United States gets better with time. It was a living hell for most people for most of its history. So this idea that America has achieved some great thing that Liberia cannot achieve is absurd. Of course, we can achieve even greater with our tight-knit population if we nationalize our identity. But Talbert's administration was very much about continuing an important policy of Tubman's, which was spreading resources throughout the country. Talbert continued Tubman's road projects. He was very much involved in getting students in various counties involved in civic projects, business ventures, very much involved in Liberianization of the private sector. So during the Talbert administration, More Liberians owned businesses and had better control of their economy. That ended in 1980. I'm not only talking about the Mesurado group of companies. I mean, we had Parker Paints. Most of the corporations of private businesses that were in Liberia were owned and controlled by Liberians in every county, really. And that, whether it be, was destroyed in 1980. So we'll fast forward to President Sirleaf, and because I don't really want to get into the Samuel Doe era, but we'll fast forward to post-war, time of normalcy, with President Sirleaf and President Weah. We see a lot more foreigners in charge of our corporations. So if you want to buy roofing materials, building materials, you go to an Indian or a Lebanese person. It's in charge of these Asians, really, Western Asians and Southern Asians. And it's really, and now East Asians, Chinese are opening these supply chains. This used to be things that were owned by Liberians. These used to be things that were controlled by Liberians. So the greatest contrast I see is that the presidents are not making an environment that's conducive to the growth of Liberian-owned medium-sized businesses. I'm not talking about a little cool bull shop or a little nightclub here. I'm talking about manufacturing companies, export. You had Somalia Drive. We were making shoes. We were making all kinds of things. We had a whole industrial complex. We had a factory to export pipeline all set up in the country. I've not heard any president really focusing on that since Tolbert's time. But, going even further back, I mean, you have President Warner, who had built a shipping line before he became president, when he was just a private citizen. You had even after him, you had E.J. Roy, who was transporting things. So presidents in the past had really heavily focused on Liberian business people being able to be contenders and have control of their economy. I don't see subsequent presidents doing that, modern presidents in these recent years, post-war years, really empowering Liberians the way presidents in the past have done. And that's going all the way back to Robert.
Thank you. Dr. Du, you work with two presidents. Walk me through a typical work week or a work day of a president, because I'm here thinking, okay, what does a president do? For me, I've not been able to even meet in person any Liberian president. What does a president do on a day-to-day basis, on a week basis? What do you
do?
Yeah. What exactly do they do?
Say they'll do nothing, they'll do everything. They get up and it's like everybody bring their own problem. That's all they do, really. People come, president listen, say okay, no okay, send it to somebody to resolve the problem. Letters. Yes, seriously. I mean, they work a lot. I mean, Madam Sirleaf used to go to the office from 9 o'clock to 8 o'clock sometimes. People would be sitting cursing her and say, why everyone can't go home? Maybe she should get married or something. But all of that was paperwork. It's like, a report coming from president. She had to read everything to know what was going on. She read every single thing. So the first thing the president would do, I would say, okay, first thing in the morning, you get all the papers, listen to the radio, you press.
What the papers you mean newspapers?
Oh, yeah. I remember Swansea Elliott got fired by Dr. Sawyer because he cut newspaper. He used to cut newspaper. He'd take papers, he would cut some news and then put them in a folder. And Amos kept saying, why you do this? You don't think I want to bring the whole paper? And Madam Sirleaf was the same way. She would get all the papers. They say no. No. Leave all the papers. She would take all of them and read them. By the time she got to the mansion, usually she would have read at least 10 papers, back to back, because Cyrus or somebody else would have paper to her by 7 o'clock. If you don't bring the paper, you got problems.
Yep.
So after that, you protocol people come in. You go through your schedule, who you meeting, who's coming in, who's going out. And then after that, your chief of staff comes in with letters that are supposed to be signed. And then you have some, pageantry issue, go open a bridge or something when you get tired. Or sometimes you have lunch. I don't see, except official lunches, both Amos and Helen, I don't remember them sitting in office and say, I'm going to take a break to eat. They never did. They have water all through up and then have dinner after people left. So
So
The
how
presidency
do they work with the ministers and then other branches of government? How does that work?
Well, if the minister has a case, issue, he send it to the usually to the chief of staff. The chief of staff bring it to the attention of the president, and sometimes the president will just put a note and say, "Okay, resolve this way." She would just put. That's what Ellen would do. She would just put a note in the top corner down and say, "No, do this," and they send it back to the chief of staff, and that issue is resolved. Sometimes she needs more briefing, and the minister comes in for briefing, or if you have foreign visitors brought in by the Minister of Foreign Affairs. So it's all reading, talking to people, reading and talking to people. That's all you do as a president. You don't do anything else. You don't lay brick, you don't cook, you don't repair cars. You just talk to people and say, yes, you done well. Oh no, that was bad. Oh yeah. So all of you talk and you read. You talk and read. But our new president, I don't know. He doesn't talk much, and I don't know how much he reads.
Yeah, we don't know. I don't think Thomas no. But Thomas, to you, sometimes I wonder, the way the president appoints almost everyone in the country. How does he vet these people? Or other people are doing these things coming to him. I really still want to. You must have so much knowledge to be over almost everything. How does that appear to you? Like the president know everything, or he's being briefed by these people? He's being advised who to appoint, all the way in Bopuru. He or she is appointing the commissioner there.
So I think Dr. Duke makes the work of the president looks so easy, but I think it's a very complex job. And like I said from the beginning, you have to be someone with a very good IQ. And you must have done this kind of rigorous work from the beginning before you get to that top. Because see all of the things that will come to you. There will be a paper that will come to you from the Ministry of Finance, some come from the Ministry of Defense, some coming from the Ministry of Health, just to write a piece of note and say, follow this and be able to resolve this problem. It has to be from experience. It has to come from knowledge.
And
so I think the level you said?
I said knowledge and consulting, maybe your lieutenant and kitchen cabinet.
Right, but Dennis, the president has a lot of advisors. But with all of these advisors, you must have the capacity to be able to absorb what the advisors are saying to you and take your own decision. Right. This is why I said from the beginning, before you become president, you must have your own kind of philosophy about how you want your leadership to be. You must have your own sense of direction. So if not, if you listen to only advisors, you have the advisors for finance, for everything, they will throw you off track. So I think the way Dr. Duke explained it and said you are there, you read papers, and then you just approve these things and move forward, it has to come from experience. And when it comes to the issue of appointing people, I think there are different ways it happens. Some of these people are coming obviously from political affiliation. When a political party wins, there are people who have worked with the party, and this is one thing that is actually destroying our governments, not only the current one, but previous ones. Because you have people who are appointed at that level of maybe assistant minister, deputy minister, and at the ministerial level, who are barely prepared to be in those positions, but because they are from the party, they have to be given those positions. And when you have these directors doing the technical work and elevating it to these people who need to make decisions, and if they don't have the capacity to be able to understand the technical nature of that work, then it becomes then it becomes a problem. So I think the appointments come in different forms. One of the things we saw under Madam Saliv was that the CSA was getting a little bit more involved in these recruitments. There are certain positions where the CSA used to advertise. The CSA will go through the vetting process and shortlist 3 persons, and then submit these 3 persons, 3 names to the president, and then the president can be able to pick from among those that the CSA has shortlisted. But I don't think a lot of that is really happening now. And you really have to be someone who understands the roles and responsibilities of these different ministries and agencies before you can be able to appoint people to go to those positions. In some instances, we see the blame going to the Senate. when someone goes in, then the point is that, but the Senate is supposed to have stopped the president. But why is the president even appointing someone who the president does not believe or who does not have the capacity to serve in a position and throw the responsibility on the Senate? So I think this appointment will come through recommendations. It will come through political party alignments. It will come through maybe some working groups, because, for instance, some agencies are created with donors getting involved in the sector, like the WASH Commission, for instance. You have Oxfam and a lot of agencies advocating for it. And then you have civil society also doing some advocacy. So they could be part of the recommendation process. But I think in the end, the president should be able to really assess these people and have that confidence that he can do the job and know what is required of them before the appointment is made.
Thank you.
Oh, let me just 10 seconds. When I mean the president reads and talk, that's what they do fundamentally. You don't do anything else. People bring you papers with issues. You read them and you interpret, and then you say somebody will take care of it. That's what I mean. I don't mean me reading newspapers.
Exactly.
But you read papers. That's all you do. People send you ideas on paper. Usually it's not like verbal.
And some of those issues you take them to cabinet meetings, right?
Yeah, some go to cabinet
meetings,
go to an advisor, but it's always about reading paper. It's you reading. You're not laying bricks. You're not running in a cardboard. You read paper.
Yeah, it's just to get information about what's going on. I hear you, Doc. I also wanted to add to that what ended up happening.
Call before you add to that.
I understand. I mean, for our Liberian setting, I don't want people to understand Doc like say, oh, the president doesn't have a difficult job to do. He just read.
No, I don't think he was. I didn't get that impression. The woman used to go to work and I leave. I've been called to her office at 11 o'clock at night. So presidents at least did not have an easy job. I've been to that office. The late Dr. McKay called me to the office at 11 o'clock at night before they were started. I said, y'all still to the office? May his soul rest in peace. They used to work very hard. But I wanted to add something about the newspaper.
Before you add that, call, because I wanted to ask you also, you get a sense of the kind of picture I'm trying to paint here, because it's very complex. So I'm looking for, how does even someone think about doing this job to run for president? Or do we really take it lightly? Or, as you say, these things, it's a very complex, big job. That's the kind of picture I'm painting. Maybe I'm not asking the right question. What do you think?
I mean, for the most part, historically, people that have aspired to be president have always been, well, let me just comment quick on the news. You should have let me say that before you ask the question, taking it back and forth.
Okay.
The woman used to read the newspaper. Everybody knew President Saliba used to read the newspaper. So they started this whole thing where they would start paying Front Page Africa, other places, to run propaganda against their enemies in the government. So one minister will go pay somebody to go write article, and then they will go write lie, they'll publish it, and the president will see it. And when the president come back from traveling, the first thing she can do is get all the newspapers. So let's go organize a protest against this other minister or do this. I mean, it became chaos because they knew the woman used to read papers. I just wanted to put facts. Anybody that doubts it, Carl will show you evidence. So that was the kind of goofy stuff. So presidents have a hard job. People are always running propaganda. They're always in the process of trying to have to filter information. People are constantly trying to misinform them, misrepresent the truth to gain favor, always trying to throw other people under the bus. I mean, any leadership role that happens but when it comes to the presidency of Liberia, it is extremely difficult. One of the greatest problems with Liberia is that Liberia has never truly been nationalized. In the past, people who have had the audacity to want to be the head of state for the Republic of Liberia, it has always been, until very recently, within my lifetime, the best and the brightest people, the most accomplished people, with very few exceptions, that have risen their hands to become president. And you go through the entire list of Liberian presidents who served, from Roberts all the way to Edwin Barclay, exceptional people. And the people who they ran against and defeated were exceptional as well. J.J. Dosen, Vyman, was vice president. He ran for president against Howard Bassaman. He was defeated by Howard and then made chief justice. Dosen was one of the most brilliant people that ever carried Liberian citizenship that ever was a Liberian citizen. Dosen is one of the greatest minds of Liberian history. You have Didwo Wolatwe runs for president, one of the most brilliant men, Monserrato crewman. He served as representative in Monserrato at the turn of the 19th to the 20th century. He ran for president against Tubman. Brilliant man. So we always had the succession of overachievers. You had an actual genius in Daniel Bashir Warner, an actual genius that could reverse engineer ships and taught himself, the man who wrote our national anthem, a multi-genius, a person who today would be, hailed as like an Einstein almost, served as a Liberian president. Liberians don't know about him because Liberians have in their mind, everybody ever been president of Liberia, they've been useless. It's not true. The people who have run and lost and the people who have run and won have been some of the greatest, most enlightened citizens. Read their works, read what they wrote. And until very recently, that had always been the case, that at least, even if they were not very nice people, they were brilliant, they were articulate, and they represented the country well. This office is now, even the representatives that served in the past were the most dignified and accomplished citizens, would be the only ones that would have the nerve to run. You think there were not other people? I mean, you look at some of these. Look, I just mentioned Didwo Twe. Didwo Twe ran for the House of Representatives because he was extremely educated, and the people of his district in Crewtown voted for him because they felt he was the best among them, even if they didn't go to school. They didn't say, "Oh no, we need to get a downtrodden man like ourselves to go sit down there, go smoke reefer and cuss with the other people." They said, "You know what? Our son went to America. Didwo, well, that's why I went to school in America. He came back. Didwo, we fishermen, we didn't go to school, but you know our struggle. Go there and go represent us. We know you get a big farm. You're making all this money, but please, I know that job not paying much. We'll take care of your farm. Go and represent us." That's what used to happen. Now, everybody can just jump up out of their sleep. You know what? I ain't get money today. Let me go be president like Rob broke. I got bills. My wife ain't want me again. Let me go be president like I mean, that's literally what's happening. And you look at the list of people, every election over the last few election periods. Go down the list. Look at the people. So the respect for the country has gone down because the knowledge and the understanding of the country has gone down. They don't have any idea the kind of big shoes they're filling. All they know is Soldier Boy Do can be president, so can I. And now everybody says, footballer like we can be president, so can I. Look at Henry Costa talking about you want to be vice president. Are you kidding? When did this happen? You got Thomas Connor here could talk circles around Costa and analyze things, circles around him. I see Thomas saying you want to be vice president. You got Dennis here. You have all these Liberian citizens that are better qualified, but for some reason, the ones that are brave enough to step forward are usually the worst among us. It's unfortunate. And I don't mean to offend anyone, but it's true. The office has been clearly been, denigrated and soiled.
We are doing the reverse engineering of everything you explained.
We're trying to reverse everything.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, if you want to be part of the conversation, our time is really fast spent here. 605-313-6004. The code is 791-403#. And we already have a list of callers lined up. So let's take a few calls here. Our first caller is Mr. Evers Morris. Evers, if I had, everywhere will come to the point of giving you a prize for always being the first caller. Thank you so much for calling.
Thank you, Mr. Jai, and hello to your panelists tonight. Great discussion. I kind of wanted to go down the line of, what Thomas was saying earlier, about decentralization and maybe looking at our Constitution and not writing a new one, but maybe doing some revision or amendments to it. that could be more inclusive of everybody. Our demographic has changed over time, and the needs of the people have changed. Maybe our Constitution can reflect us more. I want to make that point. And then secondly, when people are taking pot shots at the president, that's fine. I think there's no, what's the word I'm looking for? There's no required qualification that the president should speak to you every day, that the president should be eloquent, that the president should be a genius. You just have to meet the age requirements. I don't even think there's an age requirement. And the rest of it is for the people to vote. They could vote a genius, or they could vote a footballer or a movie star. You see in other countries, this country voted a businessman who many people thought wasn't smart, but he was qualified, and he became president. So I think when people are talking about the president not being smart, whether he reads a lot, fine. That's your individual opinion, but a lot of the people voted for him because they felt like he had the qualities that they wanted in a leader, and they voted for him. Maybe our next president could be a genius, like some of our past presidents, but this one was a footballer who people loved and voted for him. Right. So I just want to make those points. Thank you for taking my call.
Elvis, before you go, I don't think the question is whether they vote or not, right? This is a job. So it's not about voting, right? It's saying,
right, but it's not a job that's that is based on merit. It's kind of like a popularity contest. So if you're looking at it from, let's say if you're looking for a CEO, maybe the board of directors will look at the most qualified person and look at their resume. But this is politics.
Right. So who you think should run? Who you think should be president? The most qualified, or? I mean, if this was your company, who you think should be?
As it is, yeah. And again, that's what I'm saying. If I was running the country right now, of the three main candidates or four main candidates we have, I would personally go for Tawa Ngonglo. I think his integrity, being a lawyer. Most lawyers make good presidents. They can argue, they can kind of get into the details of the issues. But again, he may not be the most popular. He's probably the smartest in terms of brain power. Maybe next to Cummings or Cummings next to him. But again, who's going to win? Probably JMB or George Weah.
Right.
It's based on popularity, not necessarily the smartest.
Thank you. Thank you. Let's take our next caller here. That's Tubman. Tubman, you're live.
Yeah, thank you, Dennis, for inviting me on the show. I want to say thank you to your panelists. I listened to most of their views, and can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, I listened to most of their views, and I'll pick up a few points I want to touch on, if you can permit me, please. I will agree with Ellis. The job of the president, I agree with a lot of your panelists. The job of the president to run the day-to-day activities of the government, and he's the head of the government. And when it comes to the presidency, there is no, I think our constitution says, age 35, that's the requirement age. And it doesn't matter how well educated you are. That's not a requirement in our constitution. All right, it's a popularity contest, and whoever is voted will have the largest vote wins the presidency, and that's it in Liberia. But let me touch on the point, Ms. Cole, she made a point, I was listening to what she said. Liberia, the president doesn't answer to anybody, not a foreign president like the United States, and things. Yes, it's true. But I would say this to everybody listening today. Liberia is a very difficult country to lead. And Dr. Dukley can contest to that. If you know that. I know he worked with two presidents. And I was privileged to be on the board with the late Dr. Bumaport. I know we all remember him. He one time served as an interim president of Liberia.
How could you work with him?
Yeah, there was a situation Dr. Bumaport faced at the time he was an interim president when it comes to distributing the different ministries with the warring faction. And then the foreign ministry was not supposed to be given to the MPFL. And he insisted that he wasn't going to give the foreign ministry to the MPFL. So, but then later on, things changed. He went and gave it to the MPFL. And everybody was, on his head. And the citizens, everybody was why he had to do that, because it was that particular position was supposed to be given to England. So when I met Dr. Komoko in New York, we're on the board, Liberian community board in New York, in Staten Island. So I sat with him. I said, Doc, please. I remember when I was in Liberia at the time you were interim president, there was a certain situation and you have to change your decision, and the entire citizenry were against what you did. So he sat me down and said, listen, Tubman, the very first word for his mouth, he said, Liberia is a little country, but it's very difficult to lead. That was his very first statement. So I said, what do you mean by that? You were the president.
Just be brief, Tubman. We got other
I'm going to be brief. I got to the point. He said, yes, I was the president, but everybody blame me. I agree. You people have the right to blame me. But he said, behind the curtain. He said, you remember when I was when I was president at the time, I didn't have the armed forces. The decision, when that decision came, when Taylor insisted that he wanted the foreign ministry, I called the field commander. Field commander said, no, don't give it to Taylor. I called the ECOWAS chairman, Sonny Abacha, at the time. He said, don't give it to Taylor. Taylor is not going to get that position. So I said, okay, I have the backing. Then he told me, he said, tell me something happened. By 5 o'clock in the evening, I got a phone call. And that phone call instructing me as a president of Liberia, telling me to give the position to Taylor. So I said, well, he didn't tell me who he got the phone call. I was curious. I said, who called you? He said, no, I'm going to tell you. He said, then what I did, he said, I called Sonny Abacha immediately. When I called Abacha, Abacha said, give that position to Taylor. I called Victor Maru at the time he was field commander. Victor Maru said, you got to give the position to Taylor. I was left in the limbo. The Liberian people blame me for that decision. I have to give the position to Taylor. Taylor appointed D. Muslim Cooper as the foreign minister. But the Liberian people didn't know what was going on behind the curtain.
Right.
So I just say this to say
thank you, Mr. Tubman.
Yeah, you can be president in Liberia, but you are answerable to certain
Yeah,
people.
can I correct that? I will make a correction here because I was there. I was coming up.
I just want to bring that.
Thank you.
Okay, Dennis. I just want to put that through. All right.
Thank you.
Yeah, because I was executive assistant to Comapo, and I was also part of the negotiating team. So the decision came from IGNU to give it up because at the end of the day, in fact, it was not Abacha who was in charge of the negotiation. It was Cotonou. Cotonou was in charge of the negotiation. And I remember we went back. He said, "What are you going to do with it? You know, you say you want a national government. It's a national government. So warring faction, no warring faction." And Amos Soya said, "Yes, give them the job and let's go on. Let's disarm and go to elections." It was never a phone call from nobody. I can tell you that because I was there. I was part of the negotiating team, and I was executive assistant to Comapo. So I knew everything that was going on.
Thank you. As he said, Liberia is difficult to rule. Dr. Carr says so is Sierra Leone, so is Gambia, so is United States. Let me take two more calls here. This one is from Christopher Roti Tobasi. Chris, you're live. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Ja, and thank you to our brothers and sisters in studio tonight. Mr. Ja, until African democracy. Democracy as a whole in Africa got to be blended with the African culture. They got to work hands in hands. If you don't do that, democracy will not flourish in Africa. It cannot exist without the African culture. That's the mistake we've been making. You don't have to go to school to get PhD.
Just explain what does that mean? Blended with African culture.
I mean, in the African setting, you don't have to earn a PhD to be a leader. Talk of our African ancestors, our leaders, our kings,
they were educated in their system, right? Right now we're using the Western system. So for you to to be an economist, you got to go to school for that. So you can't. Right.
They have wisdom.
I get it.
They have knowledge. They have wisdom.
You can use that wisdom now to build a ship. You got to go to school for it. So what's your point?
But Mr. John, that's where the people are saying that you cannot look. Democracy got to work in with the African culture. They got to be blended.
Okay.
And for so long, the West have not understood that yet. And then even the African people, some of our leaders have not understand that. They think they can practice. Democracy is not pure. It's not pure. Democracy have all kinds of aristocracies or to everything in that democracy is not pure. Okay, now to my point. Until we can study the past, I be stressing this point over and over. Until we can study the past, we cannot fix the future. We gotta go back and study what went well, what was wrong, and so that we can adjust and rearrange and restart that, and then we move forward. Okay, now, for example, just for a quick example, in America, when you go to school, you learn about 16th century, 19th century American history, right? In there, they have section there for sports. You read about when baseball started, when football started, when basketball started, and who were the players, who were the leaders in that area before you get to the current day. And then you go to the president, then you go to all these people, women leadership, all these things, right? And then they try to, even in the law, in America, then every year they set it and create new laws.
So make your point, Chris.
Parliament has not created new laws. Last year, I don't even know what are some of the new laws we created in Liberia last year. Whether we revisited and changed and add, and I don't know. Send it to me if you have any. What are some of our new laws?
Plenty.
What are some of
the? They did plenty.
Parliament is the first branch of government.
All right, but
every time we go to the president, people say, "Oh, I blame the president." People say the president. Parliament is the first branch. I'm talking about that our House of lawmakers.
Thank you.
They're supposed to be blamed, but every time we go to the president, thank you for the time and the opportunity.
Thank you. Let's take the last caller here. That's Madison Camo. Madison, you're live.
Yes, good evening to everybody. I hope everybody's doing fine. I hope I'm loud enough. Am I?
Right. Go ahead. You're loud enough.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mr. Bennett. First of all, before I go to my point, I just want to make this quick comment. Some of us, we put our cartoon and this show comes on, we always come on and break the call. And so when we call it now, let it be brief and go straight to the point. Because at the end of the day, we don't make our point and go back to work.
I know.
Thank you for that.
Thank you.
I just want to make this quick point, and I agree with everything Mr. Kawu has said on the show tonight. The new issue in Liberia is education. I remember one time I read a magazine or a book on, even though I researched on top of all the cabinet ministers and said that we are war, and everybody was kind of like shocked. They were like, "What's going on, Mr. President?" And he said, "We're Liberia is facing a war. The warrior is ignorance, poverty, disease. Until we can defeat those three generals who are against Liberia development, Liberia will go nowhere. Anything we say here is just beating around the bush. Once the Liberian citizens are educated to know exactly how the government will function and who should serve them, Liberia will be a better country. There's nothing about African culture and this and that. The democracy will enjoy Liberia. They're written clearly long before some of us were born. Like who have been, giving all the history facts on this particular show. Liberians have to understand the constitution, understand the rights, understand the government function. Then they can hold those who they are elected to be accountable to them. If we can't do that, Liberia can go nowhere. That's what I want to say. Thank you so much. And thank you. Continue doing your job. We understand we're learning a lot.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Camo. Thomas, your response to our caller quickly.
So quickly, Morris made a point about the Constitution. I think since the Civil War ended, we've had three, correct me if I'm wrong, I think 2011 we had a referendum along with the elections. And we also had a referendum, I think in 2020? In fact, in 2020, everything failed.
Yeah.
So everything failed. So every resources that we spent went in vain because the people rejected everything. So one approach to the Constitution is to change every line that we want to do. But every time we attempt to change even a punctuation mark in the Constitution, is very expensive. So at a certain point, we should make a decision as to whether we want to continue to change line by line, or we want to reach to a point to say this constitution no longer serves the purpose of today's reality. We want to write a new one and compare it to the old one and have a referendum as to whether people need the new one or they need the old one. I think Dak already addressed the issue of the color that was talking about the interim government days. The only point I wanted to add was that was an abnormal time that Liberia was in, because we had the international community and everybody trying to bring peace. So that does not invalidate the point that Kou was making, that the president is not answerable to anybody out, because that wasn't a normal time. The other person spoke about the issue of the African culture. This, I think, is a very fundamental issue. And this is where Africa, we have to make a decision. If we want to follow democracy, then we follow democracy. If we don't want to follow democracy, then we should invent our own form of government. Because what we do is we take the superstructure and say we are following democracy, but yet we have someone who we regard as a king who does anything outside the constitution in the different countries. And yet we say we are practicing democracy, which is not the true form of democracy. And many other people have written about this, that since independence in Liberia, we've not really practiced democracy. And on the issue of new laws, every time those lawmakers sit, they pass laws. So the president who was asking whether there are new laws that have been passed, a lot has been passed.
Everything got to do with chopping and eating money.
Yeah, the last one. Call quickly. You, Dr. Du already responded. You can respond. Then we go to our Tabata session. We have 7 minutes left.
Yeah. So really quickly, the problem with trying to find a solution to problems you haven't studied is what my brother Thomas is presenting here. You can't talk about changing a constitution when the people don't understand it and haven't studied it, and that's why it's not functioning. The way the government of Liberia is structured, the way the United States government is structured, contrary to what people think, it is actually a very African structure. Democracy is not foreign to Africa. We don't even know who we are, what we've done, and what we've given the world. This concept of having a checks and balance government is the birth of this, the oldest remnant of this is in Africa. You have, even in our traditional societies, today, what's left of it is a 3 balanced checks and balance system. This doesn't exist in Europe. The oldest form of this is in Africa, where you have a king who is the executive. You have a council of wise men who represent all the clans within a certain kingdom or empire. Those empires send the representatives. And then you have, on a very profound level, the masked judges, the ones who come and dispense justice, the ones who, when they speak, nobody speaks after them. This is African. This is not something Europeans invented. This is your history. This is your culture. This is the gift you gave the world. Human rights that we all enjoy today. This is the child of the Haitian Revolution. This is the product of Africans who have rebelled against imperialism and injustice throughout history. These are not impositions upon us. Women's rights, African women have always been liberated. It is the foreign influence that has subjugated African women. We've always had queens, we've always had rulers, we've always been matriarchal, but we don't know our history. We take the imposition and we think it's us, and then we reject our own gift we gave the world and think it's an imposition. This is how confused we are. And this is why we talk about history is important. You cannot solve something you don't understand. I defend the Constitution because I know what gave birth to it. And I also say emphatically, without any apology, that Liberia needs to nationalize, organize before it decentralizes. Or we're going to have a bunch of tribalistic sects that hate each other, and it's going to be chaotic. We must nationalize, organize before we decentralize.
Thank you.
Can I ask a question?
You can ask me a problem too if you like.
Let me ask you a question. I think Liberia has been centralized since independence. So when you say
Liberia has never been centralized. Yeah, Liberia's always been fighting to centralize. We've never been centralized. Watch the Liberian History Channel. That's all we've been fighting for, is to nationalize the country. It's never happened. It's never happened.
So let me just finish.
Liberia's a work in progress. We've never had, this country has never, ever achieved what it was intended to achieve. We can do it. It's not impossible, but we have to understand the assignment that was handed down to us. And we need to pick up the torch and carry it forward. That's all.
So let me just make my point. You keep going back to the point that we need to educate the people, but we have had this kind of government in for over 175 years, which has not done what exactly we need the government to do, which is to educate the people, to enlighten them, and do the rest of it. And you see, the point about decentralization is not that we solve all of the problems before we decentralize. The point is we are decentralizing to solve these problems.
It won't work. Let me just complete. Make things worse.
Let me just complete. Or the alternative is we just continue with what we've been doing, and then we just continue to complain. So I think we need to get to a point where we can try other alternatives. And we've seen other countries who have done it. They've let power go down at least to the subnational level. And this point where we think that we at the central level are only the people who know the value of education. For instance, we decide on the schools in Lofa, in Nimba. It really doesn't work that way, because like I said from the beginning, people who we think have the interest of the people might not have it. And
they're going to do the same thing at the local level, because they don't have the right mindset, because people are not educated to understand the responsibility to their fellow citizens. You cannot have a bunch of clan-based dysfunction. It doesn't help. We need to nationalize. Everyone in the country needs to know that they're Liberian and that they own the country equally. First, because once you do that, once you have a national identity, everything else will fall in place. We have a problem. We've been fighting to create a national identity from the inception of the country. Just go back and look at the history and what we've been fighting for. Liberia, to say no, we need to decentralize before we have a national. What are you decentralizing? The country's already helter-skelter. People walk around and call their tribe before they even say they're Liberian. What are we decentralizing? We're talking about going backwards instead of figuring out a way for us to build a national identity, build a country that is going to benefit all of us. People are dividing themselves on the most arbitrary things. You've got a set of Grebo people trying to found their own county. You got Mono people trying to break away from the Gil people. What is really happening to us? So it's the opposite of progress. It's the complete opposite of progress.
Dennis,
people need to put Liberia first.
I don't want us to keep going on this.
Dennis, let me just complete my thought.
Hold on, Thomas, because I don't want us to. I want to have a separate show on decentralization before we are already at the 2 hours mark.
Yeah, I think we should do it next Thursday, so we can talk about decentralization, because I don't agree with everything Kowo is saying.
Yeah, I know.
You don't have to agree with me. Yeah, I'll convince you. Trust me. Watch the History Channel. Watch the History Channel and take notes. You understand where I'm coming from.
Let's table the question and we put it to next Thursday or another Thursday so we can discuss decentralization. At this time, people are so accustomed to the Tabata session, so we can skip it. So let's go to our Tabata of the week. In fact, our viewers already start listening to the Tabata. Anna Otimu said, my Tabata is VP Joe Halo Taylor's endorsement of pharmaceutical manufacturing in Liberia without regulation. I work as an application analyst for a clinical trial management system, so this scared me.
No,
pharmaceuticals.
We can't even make sure that the food that they in the market safe, that they want to make drugs.
Pharmaceutical, you able they're kind of lobbying what they can do. You're able to regulate the clinical. I can just imagine clinical trials taking place in Liberia. People, wow. This is scary. But let's come to our Tabata of the week. Dr. Do, you start.
this is Tabata. Okay, the president in the U.S. Nobody know where he is. What else? The biometrics not working, or VP Bwaka not be able to choose a vice presidential candidate, or any of those.
Thank you. Call, what's your Tabata of the week?
Oh my God, Edda took my Tabata. But I would say my greatest Tabata is Henry Costa sitting up there and thinking that he should be so close to the presidency of our beloved country. And my God, this is a man who just on July 26th was condemning our flag, condemning our country, cussed the women who saw the flag. And talking about they were the wives and girlfriends. He was so disrespectful to Liberia. And you cannot want to lead a country that you hate, that you profess hatred towards every day. The very first thing. So Henry Costa, his persona, his fake advocacy, his criminality, his blackmailing, all of it is a Tabata. Let him move from here.
Yeah, so mine is not a Tabata in the sense of how you define it, but with the suspense, the president trip, and everybody is trying to figure out what the trip is about. It's equally the suspense with people in terms of the running mate for Ambassador Boakai. And I seen somebody post and say, but if it is taking the ambassador this long to appoint his VP, how long is he going to take to form the government? Well, you have to appoint people to all of the 107 ministries and agencies and commissions. So I was actually
right.
So that might take maybe 6-7 years, and perhaps the government will be constituted after his 6 years is over.
Wait now,
so
which of the Kennedy have their VP? You're beyond the old man. So Emmanuel Jackson said, my Tabata is let's stop the violence in district number 10. I think there were people who went to Yeke Kolova's house, and he said anytime they come back, he will defend himself. Jefferson Coco, my Tabata of the week is American Talk All. Evans Morris, my Tabata is Costa being considered for VP. It will be a Europe proxy presidency through Costa and JNB. And this is not official. Maybe somebody is throwing these things out there. Sam Wallow, the Tabata of the week is people claiming that the president's invitation to a meeting at CIA headquarters means he's in big trouble. My Tabata is this whole idea of everything being a big program in Liberia, like the pharmaceutical company. Not just that. The last time a group, they said World Bank gave $40 million for loan, and there was a huge program with foreign dignitaries to commemorate that. And then just yesterday, a private business come and establish a company in Liberia, pharmaceutical, and they're going to be making drugs in Liberia. And that too was for celebration. The vice president was there giving speech. I believe if the president was in town, was going to be there as well. This is complete Tabata for us to have to shut the country down to celebrate every little thing in the country. That for me is Tabata. That's all the Tabata we have here. Let's conclude the discussion tonight. Really, the job of the president, the president's. So based on what we have discussed, and I know Evans made a point, it's not a qualification. They say you should just be this, that. But if the presidency was a job that that you are supposed to do, or if the presidency was your company, will you just employ people because they meet the age qualification or the age requirement? So based on everything we have discussed about the presidency today, the job of a president, who do you think this job fits when it comes to qualification? So wrap that up in it could be a person, it could be a description of a person. It doesn't have to be a name.
I mean, so Dennis, the Constitution clearly lays out the terms of reference for the president. So people like to only read one line and stick to it. So Elvis, read the entire executive power. It lays out that the term of reference is qualification. If your term of reference is to perform surgery, clearly you have to be able to perform surgery. They don't, if your term of reference is to look at all the things he's responsible for. He's not only he doesn't only have appointment powers, he's appointing the militia. He's the commander in chief of the Army and Navy. He shall, in recess of the legislature, have the power to call the militia to any portion thereof into actual service and defense of the republic. You can't do these things if you are dumb. You just can't. You have to have sense. You have to have wisdom. You have to have experience. You have to understand the world to follow the rules that the Constitution and the job responsibilities of the Constitution has laid out. How do people not see that this is there? You can't just read, only got a B-35. You also have to be able to accomplish these tasks. You have to be able to do these things that they're asking you to do. That's all I'm saying, so y'all good now. I love y'all. How the tough talking says that I talk. So thanks, Dennis.
Dennis, maybe not the conclusion. Can I just throw something in?
And as you conclude, your closing comments.
You want me to conclude now?
Yeah.
There is one thing we didn't talk about, which is the responsibility of the president, is that the president has the responsibility to control our foreign policy. I think Dak spoke about it, if he wants to close down an embassy in a region or in a country, he can do it. But the entire foreign policy of the government depends on the president. And for me,
Thomas, let me add, and to do that, you have to be 35 years old or you have to know diplomacy.
It's all written out. This is my conclusion now. Like I said, if you want to be president of Liberia, don't just look at your possibility of winning. The start point should be you take the Constitution and read it, because that's the guiding document, the legal framework that guides everything that we do in that country. You have to take it and read it and see what is the requirement of the president, what is the responsibility of the president, and then you can be able to see what is it that you are taking on. You are basically responsible for the safety of that country. You are responsible for the welfare of the citizens that are there in terms of everything. The president is in charge from Monrovia all the way to Hapo, from Monrovia to Green Cape, my county, to Bow Waterside. Everything that happens under your direction. You have to provide that guidance. And the point I was making earlier is that one of the things when I said these days, I really think about Liberia is that on the foreign policy side, this whole kind of global competition from a unipolar war to a multipolar war, you have to be crafty enough to be able to take your country through this. And so if we don't really we don't go back to that point where we are putting people in position because of their competence and because of the experience they have, because of their ability to be able to solve complex problems. Everything is getting complex. Climate change is now on the horizon. Who knows, a couple of years from now, today we say climate change is not a major problem in Africa, we're not contributing, but who knows what the impact is going to be. So running a state is becoming very complex, and it has to be people who are capacitated enough to be able to do it. I was listening to Museveni quite recently on a very old interview that they had with him, and the journalist was asking him, how different is Museveni today than the Museveni of 1988, I think 89, when he took power? And he says the same Museveni. The only thing that has changed is that I know now how to run a government better than before. So you could clearly see him conceding that I had to learn along the way. So if we are going to have people who will have to learn, then we have to bear with all of these different mistakes that come with it. But overall, a good conversation, a good discussion. The role of the president is very complex. It has to be somebody who has the ability to be able to take us through. And we have a lot of things. For instance, one of the things that I keep thinking of is this issue of the Africa continental trade. We're importing a lot from China, from everyone else. How are we positioning ourselves as a country to have a manufacturing base so that we can also export? All of that has to be directed by a president.
You're talking about export. We don't even grow our star staple.
Yeah, if we just say that B35, we don't have concern about any other thing, then it's going to take us time to be able to get to the level where we want to get. But I'm looking forward to the discussion on decentralization so that Kowe and myself can have the conversation. Thank you.
I'm going to win, Thomas.
Then we do on Friday night debate. So we have two of you.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, Friday night debate on decentralization. Dr. Duke.
Yeah.
I see that other people are calling in, but Dr. Duke, you're closing. And Dr. Duke, with we tonight we just saw a suit. Who should wear it?
Okay. I think the issue of the president, what on paper you have what the president should be. You know, what do you expect from the president? In reality, you have the president you get. And it comes down, in democracy, you come down to charisma, it comes down to probably competence, but all in all, it comes down to leadership. To put a winning campaign together means to be a leader. To put a winning cabinet together means that you have to be a leader. So I think it comes down to leadership, and it comes down to be patient and have some experience in running things, that you know how to think. You know how to chew your gum, run, or think at the same time, or even swim. Just listen to one. Yeah, not be naive, not take anything for granted. Those kind of things, character, you don't trust anybody except what is in the public interest. So I really don't, you can say all of that, but the president is on paper the best person you can find to run the country. But in reality, you get what you get through the popular sentiment, charisma, whatever it is, money, other things, technical knowledge. But definitely, we'll see. The president is the man you have or the woman you have, not the one you want. Oh, just before I finish that, this idea of decentralization and all of that, I think the day we have democracy, I see the day when the chief can come from the capital and say, I went to a meeting today with the other chiefs and the representative of the assembly, and we discussed this aspect of the constitution. And he can say that in the town under the Palava hat, and people know what he's talking about when he's talking about constitution. How many people know what is a constitution in Liberia? So you have to dismantle the colonial mentality. And the colonial mentality is the city run the state. Rather than the small town creating the city, we send the laws down. So democracy is what comes from the ground, where people sit and talk. And this is our constitution. How many chiefs can go to the Palava hat in the village and say, okay, let's discuss this bill that is going to be presented to the assembly next week? I'm not talking about the House of Representatives, but the chief, who's really the traditional chief, and say, let's talk about this. Let's understand what this bill means for us. Or
they rather take bribes and vote for people that won't do right.
Yeah. Or let's
taking bribes.
Let's talk about this contract that's coming from Western Union. What is in it for us? What is our rights according to the law? So then they make that decision, and that decision is passed on to the president, and the president is forced to pass it. But we do the other way around. The president decides with the investment, it comes down to the village. They say, okay, here's some cola, sign it here, and you're on board.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's what decentralization is intended to do.
You're not waiting for Friday night debate. You want
to start.
All right.
You got to educate, organize, nationalize.
Exactly. We're not contradicting each other. You're saying the same things from different perspectives.
Right. That's why I said two of them agree, just that they don't know that they agree.
They want to decentralize before they organize, and that's dangerous.
Thank you so much, Carl, Thomas, and Dr. Duke. We want to also thank our viewers for staying here with us. Even those who will watch later, we say thank you very much. On that note, we're going to close the broadcast tonight with our song that says, whether you believe decentralization or not, or you believe we are already decentralized and all we need to do is decentralize resources, we are all Liberians. What we can do is how we work together to make our country a glorious land of liberty. Good night and God bless you.
Good night.
We are Liberians.